Well, hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. Before we jump in today, I want to ask you a question. Whether you're driving, if you're watching on YouTube, keep your eyes on the road if you're driving, of course. But I want you to think about the thing that you're called to do, the thing that just drives you, that you're deeply passionate about. And what are the challenges that you could face pursuing that thing that you're called to, that drive that you have, that's the fuel to your tank? There's good with it, but there's some challenges there. So what are the challenges that you could face when pursuing the thing that you're called to do, the thing that you're uniquely designed to do? And I want you to think about that as we head into our topic, because on the podcast today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Arianna Molloy. She is a communications professor at Biola University, the author of the book Healthy Calling, and her work is very close to what we do at Stay Forth, where she lives at the intersection between meaningful work, calling, humility, and burnout. In the conversation, they're going to discuss themes of calling, humility, the importance of humility, Sabbath, and maintaining healthy work-life rhythms. And as I said before with the question I asked you, the challenges that we can face when pursuing the thing that we're called to do. So this is a phenomenal episode. You're going to unpack a lot. You're going to learn a lot. So sit back, listen, and enjoy Alan's conversation with Dr. Arianna Molloy.
We get it. You're busy. You want to grow, and we want to help. You're passionate about your craft because it deeply matters to you. Your faith is important. It's your foundation. At Stay Forth, we coach leaders to avoid burnout, live and lead with clarity, purpose, and from a place of health. We want you to experience long-term impact. Welcome to the journey. Arianna, welcome.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
Yeah, so much in common, and we're talking about your book today, Healthy Calling. And first of all, congrats, you did it. You got this thing like out of your head and heart and teaching in thousands of hours. What was the process like of putting your heart and mind into this book?
Oh, yeah. Well, I confess to you, I had a romantic notion of writing a book. I've written many journal articles and of course, and a dissertation. But for some reason in my mind, I always thought when I get to write the book of my heart, it'll be where I have like a cozy blanket and some hot tea, and I'm looking out the window at beautiful foliage, and like I have all this space. But instead, it was more like I have 2 hours this day. I have 1 hour this day. I am not feeling it, but I must. And so I think one of the ways that got me through it is that I would intentionally take time before I started writing, and I would imagine the person reading it as if we're sitting across a coffee table having coffee, and I was just able to talk with them, and that was the fun part, is imagining the person reading it. But it was not at all romantic. I was just like trying to squeeze it out here and there. So,
and not an easy topic. Healthy calling, from toxic burnout to sustainable work. So many of the same threads that we're talking about regularly here on the podcast, we're coaching into, are present in this book, but a really unique angle in that you're starting with calling. And that's where I want to start this interview. Most people talk about just calling as a good thing. Go find it someday. But you've sort of exposed this dark edge of calling. First of all, I want to read the definition of calling, and then let's just kind of open a can of calling here and talk about the good, the hard associated with that.
I love it. Ooh, a can of calling. I love that.
Calling, the experience of feeling a deep, compelling or pull toward a particular life pursuit or dedication. Love the definition of that. All right. So what's the light side of calling? What's the dark side of calling?
Great. So, I started off looking at the light side. In my doctorate work, I was really attracted to the way secular scholars were talking about meaningful work. And I remember coming across this one journal article. I felt kind of like an archaeologist discovering some sort of hidden, world, because they used the term calling. And then I reflected back to other research I had done on how Christian organizations and churches balance their business values and practices with their faith. And I was looking at that data. I went back to it and I noticed how they kept using the word calling. And, we in the Christian world do tend to use that word a lot. But it hit me that
probably overused, to be fair.
Yeah, a little overused, I think, because we don't really think about what it means. But the data shows that if you feel called to the work that you're doing, you are the most motivated, the most satisfied, you have greater resilience, you're able to withstand organizational change, societal, shifts more than any other peer group in the workplace. And that is across social science research, which is exciting. You're the person that they want in the room because you bring an energy and a focus and a commitment, which is great. So I studied that for a while. But then other pieces of data began to emerge, and it had to do with the dark side of calling. And the dark side of calling initially emerged with these patterns of, deep sacrifice that's sometimes painful, and burnout, and, just sort of the decay of boundaries. And so I began looking into all of that. And that brought me into a whole other area, because the unfortunate part is this. Beyond any other people group in the workplace, those who feel like it's just a job or a career, if you feel called to the work you're doing, you're actually the most prone to burnout. And it's a particular kind of burnout.
Yeah, I really like that part of the book. Talk about why calling burnout, as you talk about it, hits so much deeper than other types of burnout.
Totally. I mean, let's be clear. Burnout is not fun. It does not feel good. Just like regular standard burnout is awful. It can feel psychologically paralyzing. It can feel like this mixture of apathy and cynicism. You might be impatient with people. There might not be a lot of motivation to do anything. So you're like sitting in your car and just scrolling, social media. And then after you've done that, you like scroll your calendar. And after you do that, you look at pictures just to like not get out of your car, And ultimately, it's this deep feeling of, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. And that's a terrible feeling. It can lead to greater sick days and all of that. But burnout from a calling is different. And here's why. Calling is about relationship. It's about relationship with the caller, but it's also about relationship with yourself. That's called intrapersonal communication. I'm a communication professor, and so we study those different types of communication dynamics. So how you talk about work with yourself, and it's also about relationship with your community, not only those that you impact, but those who impact you. So when you feel burnt out, it's not just, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. It's, I don't know who I am anymore. And with that is an element of like what psychologists call deep shame, where there's a relational and spiritual shame of, oh my goodness, this thing that used to feel like worshiping the Lord, I don't want to do it anymore, or I can't do it anymore. And there's an element of it within that, knowing like I might be letting people down, letting God down, letting myself down. So there's a toxicity to that burnout that's deeper than regular burnout.
And maybe even some identity stuff below it of, therefore, I don't know who I am when I'm not doing this thing that serves other people and glorifies God. And it feels like a loop. And you describe that loop really well here in the book.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is, as Christians, when we're in the workplace, we're not just performing emotionally and mentally and physically. We are also performing. And by the word performing, I simply mean demonstrating, exhibiting. We're performing our faith. And so when you identify as a Christian and in the workplace, if other people know that, whether that's in a church or in a business, I talk to people who work in hospitals who experience burnout and feel called. The shame element is so much deeper because of what we're trying to reflect to others.
And you're also writing with some perspective on this as well. Give us just a little glimpse into your burnout story.
So I don't think I really experienced work burnout until the third year of my doctorate program, or third year of being a professor. That is. So I finally got the job that I loved, and I realized that that's a huge privilege. But I started saying yes to all these things, and they were all things I could do that I enjoyed doing. But all of a sudden, there was this one night where I woke up and my heart was racing like I had been, running a marathon. And I was like sweating and just like I couldn't calm down. And I actually began thinking about the checklist of burnout. I'm like, oh, that's me. Check. Uh-oh, that's me. Check, 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 check. Oh my goodness, I'm in burnout. And I think because at that point I had realized that my calling in work was a gift, I immediately knew I needed to pull over. So I did not push through that time. I say that time because I had burnout again, and I did try to push through. But that first time I talked to my dean and I just said, I think I need to say no to some things. I was planning a wedding at the time. I was on multiple committees. I was teaching an overload. And you know what? Here's the problem. It all felt wonderful, but I was burnt out. So I made some significant shifts. Now, that second time I was in burnout was actually in my 6th year at Biola. And this time I had a baby. I was dealing with parents who were sick. And it wasn't so much that it was work burnout, it was life burnout. And that was impacting my work. So that was a whole different way of dealing with it.
Yeah, it's so helpful to say, first of all, it looks a little bit different for everybody. It can come through the avenue more of life and impact work, come through the avenue of work more and impact life. Life changes. I think you're planning a wedding, for goodness sake, huge transition. Kids. I was most crispy after my adoption. After our adoption, we started with a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. Didn't understand the culture, didn't know the language, and in your mind, you're just prepared, like an athlete, to just keep going harder through it. And it's hard to quantify what I am struggling with and how hard this is, because work actually hadn't changed for me. If anything, they gave me a little bit of space over there, but it came from the life side more. And of course, it comes out everywhere. But similar experience for me, I would say I brushed up against it. And I was so grateful because, like you say, I've been looking at, okay, what are the unhealthy things here? And when you start to turn the mirror back to yourself, you're like, oh, that's me. So I'm actually grateful that I went through it, because it's awful. Yeah, on the other side of it. How would you say you're different after you said no, and after you sort of came down from maybe some of those self expectations you had? How are you leading different on the other side of that, Arianna?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think that first type of burnout helped me really carve out my boundaries in work, figuring out, okay, what is it about work that actually feels like a calling? How can I protect those things? When do I need to pay attention to when it's getting towards that burnout? Because as we know, burnout is not a category, it's a spectrum. And so it's not, oh, am I burnt out or am I not burnt out? It's how close am I to that to that deep dark side of burnout? Where am I on the spectrum today? And I actually will sometimes visualize, where would I place myself if I were to create a spectrum where one side it's healthy and one side it's toxic burnout? How am I doing today and why? So I think that first time did help me create some boundaries. I intentionally pursued accountability and mentors who could speak into my life. The second time I experienced burnout, which was more related to life burnout outside of my control, I think I realized not to romanticize the idea of pushing through. That adrenaline, like you talked about, the athlete of like, I got to push through. And when I do, it feels really good. Like, I can't believe I crossed the finish line. I did it. Amazing. But the reality is, our bodies were not meant to go through that on a regular basis. We were not meant to live in survival mode. And our personal life influences our work life, and our work life influences our personal life. Even if we don't want it to, it absolutely will.
Absolutely. So, an area that I didn't cover in my book, and you hit, I think, pretty hard, is humility. So, talk about why humility is so important in this bypassing burnout conversation.
Yeah. And, in some ways, I wish it was something like more attractive, like, ooh, like something accessible, because humility can feel like an abstract virtue. But humility is the mother of all virtues. And so when I began studying humility and looking at the data of people who either avoided burnout or were able to get out of burnout, the diagnostic was humility. And so we can understand humility, biblically as well as social science, in sort of 3 different ways. Humility, not the same as modesty. We tend to confuse the two. Humility is not passivity. If you read all these leadership books by, Patrick Lencioni or Jim Collins or whoever it may be, they always talk about humility as one of the key factors. So it involves 3 things. The first is this awareness of yourself. And what I mean by that is, your strengths and your weaknesses. You're not distracted by either one. So it's not that you don't know what you're good at. You don't want to work with people who don't know what they're good at. That's called incompetent, you know? That's called someone who is insecure and unable to discover themselves. And that's going to just be kind of annoying at the very least and time consuming at the very most. But humility means knowing who you are, your strengths and your weaknesses, but not being focused on either one of those things. Just sort of motivated from a place of gratitude. Jesus knew who he was. He knew that he was the Son of God. He also knew his limitations in the flesh. And so he knew how to manage those things. The second thing about humility is that it's a lifestyle of learning. It's the awareness that we are never going to know everything, and that's not a bad thing. So here, diagnostically, you can think to yourself, have I been super defensive recently? Or am I unwilling to give this over to someone else because I think I'm going to do it the best and I don't want to release it? This awareness of, no, there's more to learn. We are meant to be lifelong learners, and it shouldn't be a threat that we need to know more or that someone else might know something else that we don't. So knowing your strengths and weaknesses, not distracted by either one, having a lifestyle of learning. And the third part of humility is the ability to take a step back, knowing that you're not the only one in the room. You are not the God of the universe. And even Jesus himself, even God took rest. He took a Sabbath. And so I do think that Sabbath and humility, Sabbath is one of the ways that we enact humility. And it's one of the ways that reminds us and reorients us to who is in charge, what's important, and what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know how in any burnout conversation we cannot talk about Sabbath at some point. Like, and I was actually with some educators, very secular environment several weeks ago, and I've written anti-burnout toward both that say like, here's my faith, it guides everything I do, but I'm not going to overuse faith language over here because of some of the environments that I'm in. And we got to the end, and these are educators, they're exhausted, and it was like, here's your big idea. We're actually going to dream about what it would look like for you to take one day every single week and not work. And they were like, whoa, they're like blown away, you know? And to just think like, we forget that Sabbath is built in there. And I would argue that it's more needed now, especially when we talk about sort of a mental overload, Sabbath, not producing. We can work from anywhere, therefore we work from everywhere. I love that humility piece, knowing your limits, assessments. I'm curious kind of where you land on that. Other than assessments, what are some other ways to get an accurate picture depiction of our strengths, our weaknesses, the things that fill us and things that drain us?
Yeah, so I love that. And I agree. Like we could just jam on Sabbath all day long. It's so important. I think that part of that requires a self-awareness and time for reflection. And so there needs to be regular times of examining what's going on and really digging into, what would you say is the percentage of meaningfulness in the work you do? How, like on a given day, asking yourself, how much of the work that I'm doing feels deeply meaningful? And then moving from there. Again, I do think that a lot of folks talk a little bit about having your own personal advisory board. So build your board. Think about 3 to 5 people who you admire. And it could be very formal where you meet together, or it doesn't have to be. It could be just people that you meet, on a routine basis. Maybe if there's 5 people, you meet with one every week. And so every 5 weeks, you're just sort of rotating wisdom that way. And I would even say that there may be seasons where those people aren't people you even know. Like C.S. Lewis was on my personal board of directors for a long time because his writing just fed my soul. And so asking them, hey, I'm a little cloudy today on what I'm good at. I'm distracted by my weaknesses. Can you remind me, like, what are you noticing in me? Or the opposite, I've been really feeling good about myself these days. Is there something you think I need to be working on, and being open to that? So I think awareness and self-reflection are part of that diagnostic. I'll tell you something. During COVID, I started doing this, but I go for a walk every Friday. So we Sabbath on Saturday as a family. I go for a walk every Friday early in the morning by the water. We're lucky enough to live by the water. And so I just go for a walk for 30 minutes with the Lord. And I don't listen to music. I take a moment to pray. Sometimes I'll listen to a beautiful devotional. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Lectio 365. I love that devotional. I'll just take some time to offer the Lord my week and say, Lord, where have I failed this week? Show me where I've succeeded. How can I enter into the Sabbath with those things at the forefront of my mind? And for me, that has been almost as essential. This pre-game Sabbath strategy. Yeah, totally. Before I even get to Sabbath. Because I think sometimes we use Sabbath as a kitchen sink to like do all of our rest and all of our things on that one day. I'm not sure that that's what it's meant to be either.
That's good. That's good. You talk about calling here as both journey and epiphany. I love that. So talk about the long journey of uncovering or discovering Sabbath and then some of those epiphany moments.
Gosh, I would love it if we all experience these very clear moments where the clouds part and rays of sunshine pierce through and we hear God's voice say, "This is your calling." I would love that. Yeah, amazing. Oh. And some people have had those moments. They really have. And I have even had a few of those. But most of the time, calling is a process. So if you look at the data, a lot of people talk about calling as both falling in love and being in love. That falling in love feels very sharp and strong and potent and all consuming, and you can mark particular moments where that has happened. But the being in love requires commitment long term, even on the days where you're not feeling it. It requires an attentiveness to the small things of the other person. And so in calling, there's many times where I'm not really sure if what I'm walking into is the right thing and I'm asking the Holy Spirit, and it's only upon reflection, only upon looking back where the road seems super clear.
I think that's relieving for so many people. And I'm curious, I mean, you work with students, those in their 20s right now, I think are putting lots and lots of pressure to arrive or succeed faster, certainly than when I was in my 20s. How are you uncovering this idea of calling to those who are younger, let's say under 30?
So I actually teach a senior level class on communication and calling in the workplace, which is my favorite class to teach of all the classes at Biola. But I think the thing that is so important is this. We have to examine this myth of certainty and we have to break it apart and throw it away. So there's this idea, once I go to college, I know what I'm going to do. Once I choose my major, I know what I'm going to do. Once I graduate, I know what I'm going to do. Once I get this job, I know what I'm going to do. Once I find the spouse, I know what I'm going to do. Once we move to a home and we get a kid or two or three. But the reality is that need for control and certainty is mythic. There may be seasons where we feel like we've got it figured out, but those are short and sweet. And so as it relates to calling, this is where we have to take several steps back and say, oh, I need to pursue my caller, and he will continue to reveal my calling. The calling is not actually the goal. The calling is the way we enact relationship with the caller and our community. And so one of the things I have students get comfortable with is, hey, you're going to start this class with me. And by the end, you probably won't have any more clarity about your calling, but you'll have tools that will help equip you along the way to look for first job foundations, to be aware of how to be courageous in pursuing your sweet spots, to know that having a calling and pursuing a calling requires that you develop your skill set. It's not just about the skills you have, it's the skills that you need to acquire. So those are important features of that.
So it's so good. And I've got a daughter in her 20s. I think about my other three kids as they get older. And I think it's so important for us to have a realistic picture, particularly of that spectrum. I think about coaching. I'm a full-time coach. I didn't even know what coaching was until, late 20s. I'd never even heard of the term. So I really want to help take pressure off of people. And so if you're younger, listening to this, watching this, just to know the rest of us are just trying to figure it out. And just because somebody's in their 40s or 50s doesn't mean that they have this great picture of that. And we're maybe slowly figuring it out as well. And I wonder how much of that pressure actually leads us toward burnout. I found the thing. Now I better not let it slip through my fingers. Any thoughts on that and sort of the pressure of calling connected to burnout?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so there's a lot of things that can take us to burnout as it relates to calling. And some of those things we don't have control over. We don't always have control over, a boss that's asking too much of us. We don't always have the control over if we're starting off in a new job and there is an element of needing to work a bit more than you would normally. We don't have control over seasons where there's campaigns or launches or whatever. But we
Or
do have
books
control.
that you're
Right.
marketing?
Or books. Yeah. But we do have control over the tendency towards workaholism and job idolization. And those two features very much lead us towards burnout. They are the road to burnout. That sort of normalizing chronic stress is the road to burnout. And so I would say for those starting out, be very careful of the habits that you're forming right now. Be very careful about sending emails at 11 p.m. or responding to those with the assumption that that's going to be normal. Be very careful with those practices because habits form immediately. And so we need to be mindful of those things.
I loved how you talked about boundaries later on in the book. And I thought these two phrases are worth their weight in gold. They're worth their price of the book right here. Boundary shaming and boundary resilience in chapter 6. Okay, Arianna, you got to open those doors. Talk about boundary shaming and boundary resilience. What do you mean by those?
Yeah, so I noticed this phenomenon when I was doing some data collection and analysis, this phenomenon of boundary. I named it boundary shaming. And it's this idea that you are doing your job. Okay. You are doing everything you've committed to. But when someone asks you to do more, and it could be a formal more or an informal more, and you say no, the response initiates a sense of you're not a team player. You must not care about this job. Everyone else is making these sacrifices. And so you run the risk of not being given more opportunities in the future. There's this comparison of someone else's work capacity with your own. And our work capacities are unique to us. And so outside, beyond doing what you've committed to, which is important, knowing your own work capacity is essential because that boundary shaming often happens unintentionally. The other person is not necessarily intentionally trying to make you feel bad, but they are expecting you to do the same amount of extra that they are doing.
And our capacities are different.
They are different. My husband is an Enneagram 3 and he has phenomenal capacity and he loves it. I mean, I can even, when he's working on a project, his fingers touch the keyboard with such like intensity because he's just like all about it. And he's just like a maximizer. I'm going to crush this. I think for me, I do have a high capacity. I don't know that you can get a doctorate without having a high capacity, but I have a natural tendency for contemplativeness and margin space. That ignites me. That helps me. I am actually refueled when I take some time to slow down. And so it's important to know those differences. So in the workplace, the tricky part is that boundary shaming can sound like this. Well, we're all making sacrifices. We just need you to jump in a little bit more. And the problem with that language is sacrifice should be voluntary surrender with no expectation of return. That's what sacrifice is. Now, we can talk about responsibility that we have as a team. Responsibility is different. But when we spiritualize or use spiritual language to enforce someone giving more than what they already committed to, we're not helping people care for their calling well. And so boundary resilience is the ability to own your own boundaries, which of course Cloud and Townsend are exceptional at talking about this in terms of boundaries. But boundaries essentially can be boiled down to knowing who you are and what you value. Knowing who you are and what you value, and then responding with that. So when someone asks you to do more, you can say things like, thank you so much for thinking about me. Here are the 5 things I'm currently doing. I would love your help in figuring out which one I should take off of my plate so I can do this other thing.
Yeah, help me to be able to make some decisions here because I cannot do it all. I saw a study recently that the most successful leaders in the workforce are actually the ones who are asking for help right now. And so you go to your team, whether executive team, and you're the CEO, and you say, okay, I need some help. Can you help me think through this problem? But I think for many years, we caged as the exact opposite. They're the most autonomous people who don't need anything from other people, keep their head down. And maybe in a particular era of work, that was helpful, but that has died. And I just think your book gives some permission to these other pieces of it. But I love that. I love that phrase. I think we can all feel that. And let's just name, we all have a different capacity. And that's why I love things like The Working Genius. And let's just name and clarify, this is green for you, it's red for me. And any of that. I'm curious, what's your Enneagram, Working Genius, Strengths Finder, any of those kind of things? Sort of give us your makeup that you're writing this message from.
Sure. Sure. And really quick, the part of the boundary shaming that that we can personally own is when we're trying to please other people and somehow prove that we are all in when we in our minds know I don't have anything left. And that goes back to the humility as well. Am I saying yes to this because I'm feeling insecure about how I'm being seen, or I don't want them to think differently about me, or, I should know this and I'm too afraid to ask for that help or whatever that may be. Okay. All right. Are you ready for it? As an Enneagram, I am an Enneagram 6. Now, I kept getting the test and being told I was a 2, and I think a lot of times communicators are told that, but it really didn't resonate with me. And then I was talking to someone else who is a healthy 6, and she said, "Oh yeah, my first question is, am I safe and are the people I love safe?" And I was like, "Well, isn't that everybody's question?" I just thought, like, doesn't everybody ask that question? And so I think that I would say on a good, like, I generally feel like I'm actually a fairly healthy 6. And part of that is also, partnering that with other personality tests. So in the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFJ, and I love making a list and I love strategizing. In the DISC, I'm an IS. And so I love kind of that larger like group mentality. Let's all work together. But I also love that one-on-one. I want to connect with you on a deep level. I have not yet taken the Working Genius, and I need to so badly because I love everything about the table company. So, yeah. How would you, where would you place yourself on those things?
So I am a seeking always to be healthy Enneagram 7, um, which is its own unique situation. We're a lot. Um, and Working Genius, invention and galvanizing. Working Genius, I kind of knew those things. Man, it was helpful to understand that wonder and tenacity are my working frustrations. And man, that's been freeing, not as an excuse or a weapon, but just to go like, these are some burnout zones. Because really, I think Working Genius is an anti-burnout tool in so many ways. Very, very helpful. And then, Strengths Finder, Activator is big, Woo is big. So working with people. And I think that's one of the reasons, I mean, to bring it back to your book, I think it's one of the reasons that it grabbed my attention, is to say, man, we've been talking about calling and me and others talking more and more about burnout. But to bring these two together to go, like, those are the people I see burning out, Arianna, are the people who truly care about what they do. My friends who are not burning out are the ones who are just putting in their time at work. They kind of hate what they do. They're weekend warriors, can't wait to get up to the mountains. That's what we do here in Colorado, is like just leave our work behind and go on adventures. And maybe if there's a call within this, first of all, guys, pick up this book. It's phenomenal. It's unique. There's so many of the same kind of books out there. This is so different. And I like the kind of the academic fit together and the educational with the practical. I think is hugely helpful to go into data sets that I'm not looking at, I don't have access to, things like that. But I just have a huge heart for the people who are serving, whether it's my wife leading a foster care agency, or teachers, education, and medical, huge burdens right now for those folks. And I just feel like this could be a gift, especially those in education, because, buy one, for one. So thanks so much for writing this book. What now is really the question. And you address that at the end of the book. Somebody says, I'm in a bad spot. I'm not, this is not heading the right direction. Warning signs on the dashboard. What are 4 or 5 next steps that you would give people, Arianna, who are in a bad spot?
Yeah, so I would say, and you're so right, the people who are most prone to burnout, again, are actually those who feel called. So we have to equip ourselves just as much as we, as human beings are prone to cavities in our teeth. So we have to brush our teeth. We need to take showers so we don't smell. We need to drink water so we have energy. We need to care for our calling. And it's actually not, it doesn't need to be a shameful thing if you are starting to feel burnt out. It's actually very normal because there's so much giving and so much need. And when you recognize that you can help meet that need, oh, that can be a consuming thing. But here's where we need to pause. We have to go back to the beginning. Calling is about relationship. Anytime we start getting more focused on the calling as the thing, I have to do this. I need to respond to that. If I don't do this, this bad thing's going to happen. We have to use that as the first check engine light. And then I would say, look at the diagnostic of your relationships. Do you need to spend some time with yourself? That first relationship of like, how have you been talking to yourself? What are you comfortable being alone with yourself? How do you do that? Are you aware of the things that make your heart beat fast for a good way and a bad way? The other diagnostic would be, how are you doing in your relationship with God? When was the last time you spent quality time with your Savior, with your shepherd? And really key in on that. I know for me, I'm in a season of life with young kid, full-time working. We have parents who are also sick and need our help. And so spending quality time with God, which is one of the things that does fill my heart, is hard. It's a lot of time like praying in the car, praying while I'm brushing my teeth, So making sure that happens. And then the third one would be, how's my community doing? The community that I serve, have I given them space to ask questions? Or am I so fixed on getting this goal accomplished that I'm not allowing that brainstorming space? How's my community at home? Are the people that I have committed to relationally thriving, or are they thirsty for my attention? What else needs to be moved around? So I would say that's a big one, is like really go back to the heart of relationship. The second thing I would say, and you know this too, burnout doesn't go away on its own. So if you're starting to feel the itch of burnout, the tender part of burnout, do not keep going. Find the exit ramp right away. Pull over and figure out what needs to happen, because it will only get worse on its own. We absolutely need help to recorrect that.
So good. So good. So much permission here in this book. So friends, pick up this book, Healthy Calling, From Toxic Burnout to Sustainable Work. I love that word sustainable, by the way. I think the older we get, the more we need to think, how long could I continue doing this at this place? How long can I continue doing this where I don't need to crash or just dream about a sabbatical every single week? Like something could be wrong, right? Like flashing lights there. So one thing that we do here, a tradition that we usually kind of surprise or flank people with, is a little bit of a lightning round, and kind of reserve it for those people that we feel like are extra close to our message and our heart here. So you're in kind of a rare bunch of people we get excited about. We have so much in common. And so are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. So one little fun thing that you love to do with your family.
Oh man. Okay, we love to have dance parties in our home. So we will turn on some music and we will just dance it out. I don't know if you're a fan of Bluey, but there's a particular episode called Dance Mode, and that is a real thing in our household. And my son, who's going to be 6, has some serious dance skills, and so we just dance it out. And I just love watching my husband, who maybe is not the best dancer, dance it out with his heart.
Oh yeah, that's me for sure. What is one thing on your bucket list that you've been dreaming about recently?
Should I just be like totally transparent? All right. I would love to do a TED Talk. I know that's a totally random thing. I would love to do that.
Let's go. Somebody watching, listening, I don't know if you can help make this happen around that. That would be awesome.
We're actually achieving my other bucket list. I've always wanted to go to Greece, and we're going to head to Greece this summer, and I cannot wait.
Amazing. One of your favorite books?
The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. I read that about every 2 or 3 years. It totally altered the way I viewed heaven, which, to be honest, I was like, I don't know, am I going to like heaven? It's forever. What are we going to do there? And when I read about how the reality of heaven is so much more real than what we experience, that the apples are too heavy to lift from the ground and the water sounds like laughing. I know that was just metaphorical, but it helped me understand that my brain just can't handle how great heaven is going to be.
Amazing. One food, healthy or not, that you absolutely love after a long day?
Oh, after a long day, ice cream for sure. I mean, we are an ice cream family to the point where we had to do a budget and realize that we spent too much money on ice cream.
Ice cream budget, boundaries.
Now we do ice cream only 2 days a week, Tuesday and Friday. So when I wake up and it's Tuesday or Friday, I'm like, it's ice cream day.
That's amazing. Somebody who has encouraged you, let us into that conversation. Why did that encourage you?
My parents are literally the hands and feet of Jesus. And so they see me and they have the gift of speaking life, not just to me, but to anyone. I literally thank God for the gift of knowing them every single day. Also, I wrote this Lent devotional for Biola. It came out today, actually, on March 26th. And someone sent me a message just now and just said, that was a blessing to them. I think anytime I know that something I wrote or spoke blessed someone else, I'm like, oh, this is why I'm doing this. It helps someone feel equipped and seen. I used to get this image, I still do sometimes, of people being stuck in prisons where the shackles have actually been unlocked. The door has been opened, but they're still sitting there. And I think for me, in my passion for communication and wanting people to name the things that they're wrestling with, when we can name it, we unlock those shackles and we unlock those doors and we can walk out better.
I love that. One memory from the last year that's just cemented in your mind and makes you smile.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that when I got my book in the box, I didn't know that was what had arrived, in the mail. And I was wearing sweats, and our home was a mess. And my sweet son and my husband were so excited for me. And so my husband is filming it, and I'm opening it up. And I was told that you're supposed to like film this thing, and it's supposed to be, a little more probably professional. And my sweet son was like, right. And my son was like, yay, mommy. And I think just crystallizing the reality of day-to-day life and what it actually feels like and looks like, and knowing that the people in my life were thriving in the midst of it all, that was a sweet spot to me.
That's awesome. Last question. What's one thing that you wish you could have added to this book, but you thought about it after the publication date?
Oh, there's so many. You know this, right? Like I hit submit and I was like, oh, I wanted to add all these other things. I would have loved to focus a bit more on the types of rest that we can actually embody. I think we have a very poor understanding of rest. And so, Dalton Smith has this great 7 types of rest, and there's so good. Or like Gary Thomas's like, sacred pathways and diagnostics of like 9 different ways that you can feel close to God. I think in our pursuit of what is healthy, we can forget that our healthy doesn't have to look like someone else's healthy. And so that's what I like the phrase healthy, is that there's a lot of ways to interpret that. And so I would have loved to spend a bit more time saying, hey, let's look at the different ways that you can actually pursue this.
Amazing. Well, Arianna, thanks so much for all of your work. Again, we're talking about healthy calling from toxic burnout to sustainable work. This is a unique book and one I've never quite heard the angle before. So thanks so much for what you do, and thanks so much for putting your life and your heart into this book.
It was totally my honor, and I had so much fun. Thank you.